Today we're at the Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C., and we're doing a little botanical tour to see what grows on the grounds here. So this is another one of the foods brought to us by the Native Americans. It is native to the eastern United States. The berries were used for food, but they can be toxic, so you don't just eat this raw, you need to cook it. They were also used for ink. Sometimes people call this the inkberry plant. So to modern times, the shoots and the leaves are still eaten, but they must be boiled and you change the water and then you can cook it again and eat it because it's toxic otherwise. So this is one of the many foods brought to us by Native Americans. Pokeweed. This is eastern goldenrod, another one of the plants brought to us by the Native Americans from the eastern United States. The leaves were used for beverages, the flowers were made into a dye and used in various art applications and practical applications. Beautiful plant all over the eastern United States. This is a cultivated Amarok that was grown all over South America, the Mayan, the Aztecs. You know, it grew all over South America in the pre-contact days, still growing today, but it was a very important crop in the old days. The seeds primarily were used for grain, made into various cereals and mush, different breads and so forth, little cakes. The greens are also edible. They're strong when they're raw. They're a little bit better cooked. They can be dried and powdered and made into tortillas as well. And the amaranth dye was used as a substitute for red dye number 3 when we learned that that was carcinogenic. So this is a really important food plant that comes to us from the native people of South America and Mexico. So look what we found next to the amaranth. This is lamb's quarter. Lamb's quarter is actually a European native. It's now found all over North America. It's found all over the world. It's related to the amaranth and it's related to the quinoa, which was from South America. This one we use like you would use quinoa. We use the leaves in salad and in soups, and we harvest the seed when it matures, and we put it in bread batter, and we put it into soups. It's one of the most nutritious plants in the world, right here next to the amaranth. So this is these are power foods right here. Here's an example of one of the native tobaccos. The native people of the Americas did smoke tobacco. Not like people do today, not like the weak tobacco and all of the additives. This is just pure tobacco. They would smoke it in their pipes at various ceremonies. It's sticky, it's sweet, and even a little carpenter bee here likes the nectar from these tubular flowers. Very interesting plant, very traditional. This is a classic example here on the museum grounds of what we call the Three Sisters. It's primarily a southwestern agricultural technique. You grow the corn, you plant the beans fix nitrogen in the soil, fertilize it, the bean grows up on the corn like a beanstalk, and then you grow the squash on the ground as a ground cover to preserve some of the moisture. So variations of the Three Sisters were practiced all over the Southwest. This is a really good example. One of the beans, the corn, and then the squash on the ground here. In waterways, you find the willow tree. Here's an example of the willow. This is an eastern variety of willow. Long linear leaves, tassels of the flowers, and willow is known primarily for its medicinal properties. It's where we get salicylic acid, it's where we get aspirin. So the bark primarily is peeled off, and then that's cooked and you drink it, or you treat the wounded area if you need aspirin. You could use the leaves as well, and in some of the Arctic regions people actually ate the willow leaves where there wasn't a lot of other food. The wood was really important for making baskets, cradles, and all sorts of things. It's a really valuable plant. So this one is a Staghorn Sumac that native people used as a beverage plant. In the fall, when it fruits, it has these clusters of red berries that look like the bird sitting in the tree, like a cardinal. And the native people would put the berries in water, soak it, strain it out, and this would be like a lemonade plant where they create lemonade and drink it. So it's a beverage tree. Look what we found here. These are some of the wild onions that you find all over the eastern United States. They're like green onions. You can eat the greens, you can eat the bulb. The whole thing is very nutritious. Native people ate these all the time. You recognize it when it flowers. It has the 3 petals and the 3 sepals. And you do need to be careful when you eat wild onions so you don't get something that's poisonous. There are some poisonous lookalikes in the lily family. But if you have a good sense of smell, you can recognize the onions. Very fragrant. Cattails are found in wet areas all around North America. Here we see some behind us. Some people called cattails the supermarket of the swamps because there's so many food and other uses that you get from the cattail. For example, the native people took the rhizomes and cleaned them, and they ate that. And then there's the young sprouts that they ate. And cattails are most commonly distinguished by what looks like what we call the hot dog on a stick. When that's green and still young, that would be cooked and eaten in a casserole or soups or stews. And as the plant matures, that spike turns brown. At that point, it's no longer edible, but it can be broken into a fluff and used as an insulation or used as a fire starter. The pollen at the top, the yellow pollen, that's very sweet. That can be shaken out in the spring and used for food also. And then if you notice the long green leaves of cattail, they're not really strong like other fibers, like yucca, let's say, but they were used in baskets and mats in a lot of applications in the old days. You dry them, you wet them a little bit so they have some flexibility, and then you do your weaving. So this is a really versatile, really valuable plant.